can steer.
Nice.
For the first time ever.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Solid Steel Garage. A little backstory on this project. Preston's truck, my son Preston, has that white GMC truck. It's the one we call Moabby Dick. It's never steered right from the get-go since he got it. It's got hydraulic assist steering on it. It's always steered really good to the right, and he's always struggled steering it to the left. Last weekend, we rebuilt his power steering gearbox and got it all put back together. It worked amazing for about 10 minutes, and then it stopped working again to the left. Pulled it apart, pulled the hoses off the power steering ram, and found a little piece of seal down inside one of the hoses to the ram. We're pulling Preston's hydraulic assist ram off. His truck's been steering really good to the right, but it won't steer to the left with the hydraulic assist. So we're doing some investigating. We're hoping it's just something simple, like a O-ring or something. Don't let it hit you in the face.
Done that before. Oh yeah. I own it.
All right, let's go yank this thing apart and see what we can come up with.
Sounds good to me.
Hey Preston, when you push the hydraulic piston in, the fluid
It's gonna come out.
is gonna go somewhere. Good grief, dude, you slimed
It
everything.
went like 10 feet in the air.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to do. Good grief, kid. You know I'm gonna get blamed for this, right? Never ending threads. You should probably mark that so you know how long that was. We need to, right there.
Think that's supposed to be there?
It looks like it's supposed to be there. After examining the rock ram, it was pretty evident that the issue was not in the rock ram. So we're going to reassemble this, reinstall it, and then we're going to tear into the power steering box itself, see what's going on in there. We're going to pull this thing apart again. I know that sounds crazy to some people. Why not just go buy a new one? But this power steering box is about a $600 power steering box. It's already ported for the hydraulic lines. I have ported them in the past. It's pretty easy to do actually, but this one is definitely worth trying to save. We thought about going down to the junkyard and getting one and porting it, and we might still end up doing that, but we're gonna give it one last shot. They're very complicated, a lot of seals and O-rings and little teeny bearings and parts in there. But I have had it apart, and I actually got on the internet this morning and printed out that piece of literature. Shows where everything's at. So I feel confident that I can get it put back together. I did get this rebuild kit just on the Amazon. Oh, it's only like 20 bucks, so it's worth digging into this. So I'm gonna tear into this and see what we can do. You may notice I'm wearing a very special shirt this morning. Name that movie. My wife absolutely loves Christmas, so I have some Christmas shirts kicking around. I'm just gonna knock this pinion shaft out with a brass hammer here. Hopefully. It's almost as bad as automatic transmission fluid. I guess it is the same stuff. Now I'm just knocking the tensioning nut and the lock ring off of the steering shaft end of this gearbox to pull the piston out of that end of it. Last week when we tore this apart, we found a bunch of like O-ring material that had come apart and plugged some of the passages. We thought that was the issue, which I'm sure it was most of the issue. But this week, I know what we're going after, because this is that's the piece of seal that we found inside of the hydraulic hose to the ram. So there's another chunk of seal that completes this seal in there, and we got to find out why it tore. So see what we can do here. So there's the way these Saginaw boxes work. There's ball bearings that ride on a worm gear for reduced friction. So there's a cage that holds the bearings. Just a sec, let me wipe my hands down and I'll bring the camera over here. So the way these Saginaw boxes work, there's ball bearings that ride inside this cage, and they run through that cage and through this housing on the piston, and they ride on the worm gear down in here. You can't see the worm gear, it's behind that piston. But they ride on that worm gear, and it reduces the friction because it's not just a gear, it's ball bearings rolling and riding on the gear at the same time. So it's a pretty ingenious design, but there's a ton of little parts in here that if you don't keep track of all of them, you're gonna be hosed when you put it back together. So this cage is full of ball bearings. I'm going to grab a magnet and grab that cage and start pulling the ball bearings out of there. Going through gloves faster than doctors do. You start pulling these ball bearings out of here. The goal is to not drop them. Sounds like I already dropped some, but we definitely don't want to lose them. So we put the cage in this magnetic tray, start pulling these out of here. The easiest way to retrieve all the ball bearings out of the worm gear is just to rotate the steering shaft back and forth until you get them all with the magnet. Okay. Well, there's the rest of that ring.
Where did it come from?
This groove right here.
So we didn't lose this one.
No. The O-ring that's underneath it's blown up too.
See these ports? You got a port there.
Yeah.
You got a port there. We need to make sure that those are clear.
Yeah. Funny how a 20-cent part can cause this much grief. Weird that O-ring is just gone.
Shattered. Where did it go? Where's all the pieces?
Probably in all the little channels.
That one's clear. That one's clear. That one's clear.
Oh, that must be some pretty high pressure in there. Push an O-ring clear around through all these little holes. So here's the seal that broke. That seal was in that groove right there. Here's a new seal out of the new kit. I'll put that in. But all of these little passages were full of O-ring. There's an O-ring that sits underneath the seal to hold the seal out and into the piston. But all these little holes were full of O-ring from that O-ring coming apart. So I got those cleaned out. All I could figure is there was a little sharp edge on that one orifice, and I'm figuring that cut the seal, made it fail. So we cleaned that up, made it smooth. I'm just going to reassemble this and get it back in the truck, and hopefully that fixed it.
I'll just clamp it in the vise on the threads.
Would ya?
Huh?
Appreciate that.
So you think that's a good idea?
That's a great idea. Just clamp it in the vise on those fine threads.
Yeah.
So I got all the chewed up O-ring out of all those little orifices in here. Put this top assembly back together. All the other O-rings and the other seals were still good. So I didn't change those out. So we'll have some spares in case we have to go through this again. I'm hoping we don't have to do that. Last thing I got to do with this is I'm going to cake this with grease to hold this O-ring. And that's the top assembly, gets all put back together. This little caged bearing rides down in the casting, and then the whole top assembly is basically done. And then I just got to get the bottom piston back in it. After I get the bottom piston back in, I can get the pinion shaft back in and get all those ball bearings back in there. That was almost a pinched O-ring there. Okay, there's that complicated top assembly. It's really tricky to get it in there without spilling everything out, so I'll flip this over so I can reach down in here and grab the worm gear. Getting lots of practice on this thing.
Are you going to be a steering box expert?
Oh no.
I have no idea how they work.
It's very complicated.
How'd you break your cheekbone? The steering box fell on my face.
You got one started? That's good. It's not only heavy, it's slippery. You need me to hold it up?
Yes. Making out with mom.
That did not happen. That needs to be cut out of the video.
I think it wasn't even starting the whole time.
That'll happen on these bigger jobs. To get the air blade out of the system, we just jacked it up on jack stands and turn the steering back and forth like 10 times, full lock to full lock. Gets the air bubbles out. And then after you're done with that, you can start it and do the same thing with it running.
Whoa. Okay, maybe start it now.
Okay.
Something on the right side.
It's battered. Yeah, I think we gotta replace that in. Tie rod in. Gotta do a tie rod end though. But it is steering. I can steer
Nice.
for the first time ever.